What's going on today, Internet? Selfish here with Retrospect, and in 2022, amongst enthusiasts for emulators you could fit in your pocket, the Miyoo Mini was the top choice. Unfortunately, they had a lot of supply issues. So Anbernic came out with an answer with the RG35XX. It's a little bit bigger, but it has a lot more power, though there were a few things that were missing. And now they seem to have addressed those with the 35XX Plus. Let's take a look and see how they did. This is the RG35XX Plus. Very similar to the 35XX. Very, very similar. You can see they do sit a little differently, and that has something to do with the back buttons, which we will take a look at here in a moment. So let's go through the I/O real quick, and then we will carry on, take a look at a couple of games, and we're going to try to make this a quick video for you, just to give you kind of a breakdown to see if this is going to be a worthwhile upgrade for you. Here on the top, we do still have the HDMI out port, which is fantastic. Something that some of their competitors have not got around to doing yet. On the back here, we do have our shoulder buttons. They have added a battery door, and they were smart to screw it in, because something like the Miyoo Mini, the battery door can fall off every once in a while. Just to have a single screw to get into the battery versus taking the entire back off, I think makes it much easier for people who want to get some longevity out of this device with the ability to replace the batteries. Now, when we look at these shoulder buttons here, one change that they did make, and I'm not sure how I will be able to see it on camera, but they are now offset. They took some advice from like possibly better back buttons, or at least some of their design idea. And if you can see, they have a slope, which makes it much easier when you're playing in order to not get incorrect button pushes. And if you want to see what I'm talking about, if you look at last year's model, the 35XX, they're all straight across. Now, one thing they haven't completely fixed yet was the rattle. It's still a pretty loud, rattly device, which is really unfortunate. I thought they'd fix that by now. Moving right along from the back, we'll go to the right side over here. We do have two memory card slots. One's for the operating system, one is for your games. We do have a reset button, and we do have our power button. Going over to the left side over here, we do have our volume up and down. So these are very much set up like a lot of the other devices out there. On the bottom here, we do have our Type-C hole. This does do C-to-C charging, which is one of the first pocketable devices to be able to do that, and I hope everybody else follows suit. And then we do have our 355 hole for your headphones. On the front here, we do have our D-pad, which I'm hoping that they fixed, because in the 35XX, the D-pad, you had to put tape and stuff in it to make it work right. We do have our menu button, our face buttons. All these feel really good. And Anbernic is kind of known for their D-pads, which is, back to that, kind of the weird thing about the 35XX having a problem. Start and select are also on here. Let's fire it up and take a look and see what we got. What you'll notice here is we are running the stock operating system, because these devices here do not have a good build of Garlic yet. Garlic 2.0 does work on this device, but unfortunately it doesn't take advantage of some of the new upgrades. So until it does that, you're best off running the stock OS, which is really kind of unfortunate, but it's not as bad as it used to be. Not saying that it's good, though. Before we go any further, let's go over the specs of the device. Here is our RG35XX Plus. Its base operating system is Linux. It's on a 3.5-inch IPS OCA laminated display. Looks very similar to the original 35XX. The bezels are slightly thinner, which is, I guess, a nice thing to see. It's got an H700 quad-core processor, which is kind of like the equivalent of the RK3326 processor, with a Cortex A3 at 1.5. It's dual-core. It's running 1 GB of LPDDR4 RAM, which is better than most of the other pocketable devices in this category. It does have 64 gigs for the operating system on a memory card right here, and then you can run up to 128 on the expansion slot. It is supporting Wi-Fi now, which is fantastic. It's about time this gets Wi-Fi for retro achievements. If you want to scrape your artwork, if you want to be able to play with your friends, there's a lot of advantages to having Wi-Fi. I know the big thing when everybody had the 35XX and they were like, what do I want Wi-Fi for? When they were trying to compare it to the Miyoo Mini. I'll tell you what, I use Wi-Fi on my Miyoo Mini Plus all of the time, so I don't know what don't you need Wi-Fi for. It's kind of how I've always felt about it. This does have Bluetooth 4.2, does not at this point support headphones. None of these Linux devices tend to support headphones. You'd have to have something that has the Android side, and that's just not something we're seeing right now. It does have a 3300 milliamp battery, which will give you roughly 8 hours. And like I said before, it does do C-to-C charging. Now, this does offer some more game selection, and it's kind of weird how Anbernic sets this up, but you have your game room, and then you have your RetroArch room. For whatever reason, they're separated and do host different systems. So if you're in RetroArch, you're going to see things like Dreamcast, PS, things like that. You're not going to see the Dreamcast and some other systems inside the regular game room here. You are going to get PSP, PS1, that kind of stuff. You do have your MAME catalog, which is fantastic to see on these retro devices, just because that's kind of what started it all. And of course, they included WonderSwan, which nobody ever plays on these devices. I'm not even sure if anybody ever plays Game Gear. I still have my original Game Gear, so if I'm going to play that, that's typically where I would play that. We are going to do a quick breakdown and just do a couple of games quick, but first I wanted to show you a couple additions to the settings menu. They do allow the I/O test, but the big things in here are going to be a straight shot to RetroArch, your Bluetooth settings, which again are going to be for controllers, which actually is really nice if you're using the HDMI out and being able to use a controller. You could replace some of those cheaper consoles we take a look at that are in that like $60 price range with one of these devices, because it would give you the ability to just plug this into your TV. Kind of like that goofy K8, but that one didn't have any gaming capability on its own, and it got really hot. One other thing that I think is huge on here is Moonlight. I don't know that you're going to want to use it to play AAA games on newer systems, but if you don't have your whole library on here of things that you want, Moonlight will give you access to that library, and as long as you have the ability to play them on your computer, you'd be able to play them on here, which I think is awesome, because I have way more MAME games on my computer than will ever fit on one of these devices. And then you get your sound background settings, stuff like that. They definitely added some things to this. There is a new firmware that's out in testing right now at the time I'm shooting this. When I went to download it for this video, the link was down, so I was unable to download it to test it for you. But apparently there's some additions to this operating system, so I look forward to doing another video in the future where we will be able to take a look at that. All right, let's do a little game testing. So this is going to be a first experience for me, just like it's going to be for you. Now, the game selection on a lot of these is not going to be huge. There's only 9 PSP games in this folder. I wonder how many are in the other folder now. Oh, sorry, there's only 9 in here too. Never mind. Let's go PS, PSP, and Dreamcast. We'll just try a game out of each. We'll do some Tekken 3 on PSP. This appears to be running the wrong BIOS out of the box, just with the way everything is running. So you can actually go in here and change the BIOS file just by hitting the menu button and then go to BIOS. I don't know why it's automatically on there, but cool. And then we'll go to the different BIOS file. I'm gonna guess the game is gonna reboot. And here we have Tekken 3 on PSP. I never really realized how tall she was. I don't know if this is stretched, but she looks really tall. Or maybe it's just the other lady looks really short. This plays fine. In this particular area, we can't see FPS, unfortunately. We're going to try some Ridge Racer here on PS1. Ridge Racer tends to be a harder game to emulate, so we're going to give it a shot and see what happens. Well, this obviously seems to work just fine, so without wasting your time, let's go try out some other games. Apparently I'm in a practice battle, but this will give you an idea what Tekken 6 looks like. Oh my goodness. I just wanted to play a game. I don't want to do this. Doesn't really matter. Seems fine. Works pretty good. My biggest problem with Tekken is I never get close enough. A lot of times I'm like way too far back. This here is actually running off PPSP, which is pretty awesome. All right, since we know Tekken will work, pretty much most of the stuff in here will work. We are going to go and we are going to try Dreamcast, which is added to the lineup since the last one. We are going to go with Crazy Taxi 2. I don't know why I have to say it like that. I think it's because he says it when you get into the game. We're back. Well, we'll see how this goes, and if it plays well, we are going to be set. I can already tell you this is going to be just fine. This guy told me to wait up, but then he didn't get in. So Crazy Taxi works great. This is on Dreamcast. We're going to try one more Dreamcast game and then we'll be done. And so oddly how the other one played on PPSP, Dreamcast is playing on RetroArch, which makes sense because we are now in the RetroArch menu. Disregard my last. See what else we got in here. Nothing super intensive, it looks like. Boy, talk about a game I haven't played in a long time. You don't have to be super accurate. That's awesome. I can shoot with that. Sweet. Oh, I was going to say, there's got to be a way to pull the screen out. I mean, it seems like the scope moves really slow, but I'm pretty sure that this scope has always moved slow. So what do you think? Do you think they made the right changes and the right choices here on the RG35XX Plus? Is it everything that you hoped it would be? Also, if you have a 35XX, are you planning on upgrading to the 35XX Plus? I'm just curious. There's a $12 difference or so between the two, which I will put links to these devices down on my thingamabob in case you're interested in picking one up. But are the subtle changes worth it? I know a lot of people who've modded the 35XX, and so going into a 35XX Plus doesn't make a lot of sense probably because of all the work they've put into setting up the other one. It does feel a little heavier. Now I'm kind of curious. 180 grams. 192 grams. Huh. It is heavier. Weird. But anyways, what do you think with the additional Wi-Fi and some limited Bluetooth support? Is this going to be a better device for you? It is still the same height. I don't know pocketability wise. I still think the Miyoo Mini might be a more pocketable device. Well, I know it is, but this seems like it's better than the original one was. Maybe it's just the offset of the buttons here on the back. These ones actually stick up a little bit more on the lip too, so they tend to get stuck on your pockets, where this does not have that problem because they're not flush with the lip. This is almost like something that looks like they took off the XU10, where they had those goofy lips on it and then had a lip up on top, but this makes sense to me. It's just much more pronounced than the original. Let me know what you think about the RG35XX Plus down in the comment section below. I will again leave links to everything we talked about here today down in my thingamabob, in case you're interested in any and or all of it. And please don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share this video with your friends because sharing helps grow the channel, and I could use all the help that I can get. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Oh good, you're still there. Glad to see you made it all the way to the end. Hey, do me a favor, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Also, YouTube thinks that you're going to like one of these other videos, so why don't you check one of them out? Maybe they'll be right. Anyways, that's all I got. I'm out.